After 70, the habits that once kept life moving can quietly begin working against you. One daily routine, done automatically, without thought, fails most seniors not because they are weak, but because time has changed what the body and mind need. For most of life, habits are how we survive. They form quietly, almost invisibly, shaped by work schedules, family needs, and the simple pressure of keeping up. You wake at a certain time, you move through the house the same way, you complete tasks without thinking because thinking would slow you down. These habits once meant strength. They meant reliability. They meant you could handle life without stopping to question every step. In younger years, this automatic way of living was a gift. The body recovered quickly. Balance corrected itself without effort. Fatigue passed after a short rest. Efficiency mattered more than awareness, and speed often felt like competence. There was pride in being able to do things the same way every day, without hesitation, without help, without pause. But habits have a strange loyalty. They stay even when life changes. They stay when the body changes. They stay when the reasons that created them no longer exist. After 70, many people are no longer rushing to jobs or raising children. Yet the habits formed during those years remain firmly in place. Movements are still quick. Tasks are still stacked back to back. Rest is delayed. Signals from the body are acknowledged later, if at all. Familiarity becomes comforting, but it can also become misleading. When something feels normal, it rarely feels dangerous. Doing things the way you always have creates a sense of control, even when control has quietly shifted. The floor feels the same, the stairs look the same, the routine hasn't changed, so it's easy to assume the outcome won't change either. What often goes unnoticed is that habits do not age with us unless we ask them to. The body's margins grow thinner, recovery takes longer. Balance becomes more dependent on attention. Muscles and joints no longer forgive rushed movements. Yet the habit insists, do it quickly, do it automatically, do it without thinking. There is no sudden failure at first. That is what makes this so hard to recognize. Instead, there are small signs. A moment of dizziness that passes quickly. A misstep that is laughed off. A deeper tiredness at the end of the day that feels undeserved. These moments don't announce themselves as warnings. They feel like inconveniences, or simply one of those days. Because the habit once served you so well, questioning it can feel like questioning your own capability. Slowing down may feel unnecessary. Pausing may feel indulgent. Changing a routine may feel like admitting something has been lost. So the habit stays, not because it still fits, but because it feels tied to identity. This is not stubbornness. It is loyalty to a version of yourself that worked hard, showed up, and handled life without complaint. Letting go of that rhythm can feel like letting go of proof that you are still the same person. But habits are tools, not truths. They are meant to serve the life you are living now, not the one you lived decades ago. What once protected independence can quietly undermine it when it no longer matches the body's needs. Recognizing this is not about fear. It is about honesty. The habit itself is not wrong. It is simply old. And like anything old and valuable, it deserves careful handling, not blind reliance. In the chapters ahead, we will look at why this habit begins to fail after 70, not as a flaw, but as a natural consequence of time. Understanding this first step, how familiarity hides change, opens the door to adjustment without shame, and awareness without loss. What changes after 70 is not willpower or intelligence, it is the margin for error. The body becomes less forgiving, not fragile, but more honest. Movements that once corrected themselves now require cooperation. Fatigue that once disappeared overnight now lingers, asking to be noticed. The habit that once worked begins to fail quietly, not because it is wrong, but because it was designed for a different body, a different pace, a different season of life. One of the most overlooked changes is recovery. Earlier in life, the body absorbed strain without protest, muscles adjusted, joints compensated, balance recalibrated almost instantly. After 70, recovery still happens, but it asks for time and attention. When a habit pushes the body repeatedly without allowing space to recover, the cost accumulates slowly, not dramatically, quietly. The body keeps going, but it remembers. Another shift is the reduced margin for error. In younger years, a rushed step, a sudden turn, or a skipped rest rarely led to consequences. After 70, the same actions require precision. The body can still perform them, but it needs awareness to do so safely. Habits built on speed and automatic movement remove that awareness. They bypass the pause that now matters most. There is also the weight of accumulated wear. Decades of use leave their mark, even in strong bodies. Joints have histories, muscles have patterns. Balance systems have adapted over time. None of this is a failure. It is evidence of a life fully lived. But when an old habit demands the same output without acknowledging this history, strain becomes more likely, not immediately, over time. What makes this habit particularly risky is that it does not announce its failure. There is no clear signal that says, "This no longer works." Instead, there are subtle messages, a stiffness that lingers longer than expected, a moment of hesitation before standing, a sense of being slightly off balance that fades quickly. These signals are easy to dismiss because they are not dramatic. They do not feel urgent. The habit fails because it does not adapt. It continues to assume the body will adjust as it once did. But adaptation now needs to happen in the habit itself. Without that adjustment, the habit becomes rigid while the body becomes more precise in its needs. This mismatch creates strain, not because the body is weak, but because it is asking for partnership rather than command. After 70, the body responds best to habits that listen, pause, and respond. Habits that rush, stack tasks, or ignore early signs of fatigue work against that partnership. There is also a psychological layer. Many people continue old habits because they symbolize independence. Changing them can feel like admitting decline, but the truth is quieter and more dignified. Adjusting a habit is not surrender. It is skill. It is the wisdom of knowing when to change tools to protect the work that matters most, living well. The habit does not fail because of age alone. It fails because it insists on staying the same while everything else evolves. Age simply reveals what rigidity hides. Flexibility, not force, becomes the measure of strength. Understanding this opens a new path forward, not one of fear or restriction, but of alignment. When habits are allowed to grow older with the body, they regain their usefulness. They stop working against you and begin working with you again. What makes this habit truly dangerous after 70 is not the habit itself, but how quietly the harm arrives. It does not announce itself with pain or crisis. It whispers through small changes that are easy to explain away. A little more tired than usual. A moment of hesitation before moving. A brief lapse in focus that passes quickly. These signs feel ordinary, almost expected, and that is why they are missed. Fatigue is often the first signal, not the kind that demands rest, but the kind that settles deeper than it used to. Tasks that once felt neutral begin to leave a residue of tiredness. The body completes them, but with less ease. Many people respond by pushing through, believing endurance is the answer. Yet this fatigue is not a test of strength. It is information. It is the body signaling that the habit is taking more than it gives. Hesitation follows quietly. A pause before standing. A moment of recalculation before turning or stepping. These pauses are not weakness. They are the body protecting itself, checking balance, assessing readiness. When habits are rushed or automatic, they override this protective pause. The hesitation is dismissed as distraction or age, rather than recognized as wisdom built into the body. Focus can also begin to slip, especially during routine actions. Multitasking that once felt efficient now requires more effort. Attention divides more slowly. This is not cognitive failure. It is the brain prioritizing safety and clarity. When a habit demands divided attention without adjusting pace, small mistakes become more likely. Not dramatic ones, but enough to increase strain and risk over time. Tension is another early sign. Shoulders tighten, jaw clenches. Breathing becomes shallow during tasks that once felt easy. This tension often goes unnoticed because it becomes familiar, yet it signals that the body is compensating. It is bracing itself to meet a demand that no longer fits comfortably. Over time, this constant bracing can lead to discomfort, stiffness, and reduced mobility. What makes these signs especially easy to ignore is how they are labeled. This is just aging. Everyone feels this way. It's nothing serious. These explanations provide comfort, but they also delay attention. Normal aging does bring change, but it does not require silent suffering. The problem is not the change itself. It is the refusal to adjust in response to it. When these early signals are ignored, the strain does not disappear. It accumulates. Muscles remain tense longer. Fatigue deepens. Focus becomes less reliable. What could have been resolved through small adjustments turns into something harder to reverse. Not because the body is failing, but because it has been unheard for too long. There is also an emotional cost. Ignoring these signals can create a quiet sense of unease, a feeling that the body is no longer trustworthy. This can lead to fear, hesitation, or withdrawal from activities that once brought joy. The loss is not sudden, but it is real. Listening earlier preserves confidence later. When subtle signs are acknowledged, habits can be softened, paced, or reshaped. The body responds quickly to being respected. Ease returns. Confidence steadies. Movement feels safer again, not because risk is eliminated, but because awareness has been restored. The hidden harm is not age itself. It is the delay in listening. After 70, the body speaks more softly, but more truthfully. Learning to hear those early messages is not about preventing all harm. It is about preventing unnecessary harm. It is about choosing to live in partnership with the body, rather than asking it to keep up with a past that no longer applies. There is a reason this habit is rarely questioned in time, and it has very little to do with neglect. It lives in the space between praise, pride, and silence. From the outside, continuing exactly as before is often treated as a sign of strength. You're still doing everything yourself. You haven't slowed down at all. These comments are meant as compliments, but they quietly discourage reflection. Family members, especially adult children, often hesitate to raise concerns. They fear sounding disrespectful or alarmist. They worry about being seen as overprotective or dismissive of independence, so they stay quiet even when they notice subtle changes. A longer pause before standing. A little more stiffness afterward. Silence becomes a form of love, but it is a fragile one. Culturally, aging is often framed as something to resist rather than adapt to. The message is clear: staying the same is winning. Changing habits is framed as decline. This leaves little room for healthy adjustment. Seniors are rarely told that adaptation is not surrender. It is intelligence. It is how the body has survived every stage of life so far. There is also personal pride, which is deeply human and deeply earned. After decades of managing responsibilities, providing for others, and carrying burdens, it feels important to prove capability. Letting go of a habit can feel like admitting loss, even when the habit itself is no longer serving well. Pride does not mean denial. It means wanting to honor a lifetime of competence. Unfortunately, that same pride can delay small changes that protect future independence. Medical conversations often miss this space as well. Appointments focus on symptoms, numbers, and diagnoses. Subtle daily habits rarely come up unless they've already caused a problem. By the time a fall, injury, or major strain occurs, the warning window has passed. The question becomes reactive rather than reflective. What could have been adjusted gently now requires recovery. Even friends and peers reinforce the silence. There is comfort in shared routines and shared stories of still doing things the old way. No one wants to be the first to admit that something feels harder. The unspoken agreement is to normalize strain rather than question it. This creates a quiet echo chamber where warning signs feel less urgent because everyone else seems to carry them too. The most powerful reason no one warns you in time is that the habit does not look dangerous. It looks familiar. It looks responsible. It looks like independence. There is no dramatic moment that demands attention, just a slow mismatch between how the habit was formed and how the body now responds. Yet change does not erase identity. It preserves it. Adjusting a habit does not mean you can no longer do something. It means you want to keep doing it longer, with less risk and more ease. True independence is not about repetition. It is about responsiveness. The silence around this issue is not cruel. It is cautious. But silence has a cost. When reflection is postponed too long, the body is forced to speak louder later, and loud lessons are harder to learn from. Breaking this silence begins internally. It begins with permission to ask a simple question. Does this still serve me the way it once did? Not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of respect for the years already lived and the years still unfolding. Fixing a habit does not begin with stopping. It begins with noticing. The goal is not to erase what has carried you for decades, but to adjust it so it carries you forward without strain. Independence is not preserved by stubbornness. It is preserved by wisdom. Most habits that quietly fail after 70 do so because they run on speed and assumption. They assume the body will respond the same way every time. They assume recovery will be quick. They assume attention can be divided without consequence. A gentle correction starts by removing those assumptions. Slowing down is not retreating. It is regaining control. When pace changes, the entire experience changes. Movements become intentional rather than automatic. Transitions are given time instead of being rushed through. This small shift alone reduces risk because the body is no longer forced to catch up with the mind. Awareness replaces momentum, and awareness is one of the strongest protections at this stage of life. Spacing is another quiet adjustment that protects independence. Doing everything at once used to feel efficient. Now, it can quietly exhaust reserves. Breaking tasks into smaller segments does not mean you are less capable. It means you understand your energy more clearly. Rest is no longer a reward after pushing through. It becomes part of the rhythm that allows you to keep going. There is also the correction of attention. Many long-held habits were built around multitasking, moving while thinking ahead, reaching while turning, rushing because there was always another obligation waiting. Fixing the habit often means doing one thing at a time again. Not because the mind is weaker, but because the body now asks for clarity. Focus becomes a form of care. Importantly, this adjustment is internal before it is external. It does not require announcing change or explaining it to anyone. You do not owe justification for protecting yourself. Independence that depends on approval is fragile. Independence that comes from self-trust is durable. Some people fear that once they change one habit, everything will begin to shrink, that life will become smaller. The opposite is usually true. When strain is reduced, confidence returns. When confidence returns, willingness expands. You move with less hesitation because your body feels respected rather than challenged. Fixing the habit also means letting go of the idea that consistency means sameness. True consistency means staying aligned with who you are now. Every stage of life has required adaptation. Childhood did. Adulthood did. This stage is no different. The skill has always been adjustment, not endurance at all costs. What matters most is that the correction remains gentle. No dramatic overhaul, no fear-based rules. Just small choices repeated with awareness. A pause before standing. A moment to orient before moving. A willingness to stop before exhaustion sets in. These are not signs of decline. They are signs of mastery. Independence is not proven by how hard you push. It is protected by how well you listen. When a habit is fixed with care rather than force, it becomes supportive again. And support, not struggle, is what allows independence to last. In the end, fixing the habit is an act of respect. Respect for the body that has carried you this far. Respect for the life you still want to live. And respect for the truth that wisdom is not about doing everything the same way forever. It is about knowing when to do it better. Choosing awareness over autopilot is not a dramatic turning point. It is a quiet decision made again and again, often without anyone noticing. Yet it may be one of the most powerful choices a person makes after 70. Awareness is not about being cautious all the time. It is about being present enough to notice what the body is asking for now, instead of relying on what once worked without thought. Autopilot served a purpose for many years. It allowed life to move quickly. It helped manage responsibilities, deadlines, and constant demands. Habits ran in the background while attention was pulled elsewhere. But after 70, the cost of autopilot changes. What once saved energy can begin to drain it. What once felt efficient can now feel rushed. The body no longer corrects small missteps automatically. It asks for partnership instead. Awareness is that partnership. It shows up as a pause before movement, a moment of checking balance, a quiet scan of the surroundings. These moments are not delays, they are investments. They prevent the sudden shock of injury, the slow buildup of strain, and the quiet erosion of confidence that follows near misses. Awareness turns everyday actions into informed choices rather than habits performed without reflection. There is dignity in this shift. It says, I am paying attention to myself. That message alone changes how the body responds. Movements become smoother, breathing becomes steadier, fear decreases because nothing feels rushed or forced. Life begins to feel navigable again, not because risks disappear, but because they are seen early. Many people worry that awareness will make life feel smaller or more fragile. In reality, it often restores trust. When you know you are paying attention, you move with more confidence, not less. You stop bracing for what might go wrong because you feel prepared to respond. Awareness does not mean anticipating disaster. It means staying connected enough to adjust before trouble appears. Letting go of autopilot also softens the inner voice that says, I should still be able to do this the same way. That voice is rooted in pride, but also in fear of loss. Awareness replaces that fear with curiosity. It asks, how does this feel today? Instead of, why can't I do this like before? That small change in language reduces self-judgment and increases calm. This stage of life rewards consciousness. The body gives clearer feedback now. Tension appears sooner. Fatigue speaks earlier. Ignoring those signals is what causes harm, not the signals themselves. Awareness listens, it responds, it adjusts without drama. In doing so, it preserves energy for what truly matters. Choosing awareness is also choosing longevity with quality, not simply living longer, but living steadier. Fewer setbacks mean fewer interruptions to daily life. Fewer injuries mean less fear of movement. Each conscious choice supports the next, creating a sense of continuity rather than decline. In the end, awareness is not about monitoring every step. It is about staying in relationship with yourself. Autopilot belongs to a time when life demanded speed. Awareness belongs to a time when life asks for care. Making that shift is not surrendering independence, it is redefining it. After 70, the strongest protection is not strength alone, it is attention. And attention, given gently and consistently, becomes a form of respect that carries you forward with steadiness, dignity, and quiet confidence.